Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Just Bring It podcast, like you hear, another English one. Today, we will talk to the Paint Prince Alexander James. But before talking to Mr. Alexander James, I would like to introduce to you my podcast partner. Today, Sebastian is my podcast partner. It's some days ago that we did the last podcast together. Sebastian, when was the last podcast we did together?
Yes, I guess the last one was after 16 carat,
Oh, yes.
I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
So it's
that's 2 months
it's
already.
it's about time.
Oh, yeah, of course. And to say, it's about time to speak to someone that we both have seen on the 16 carat weekend. And
Yes.
so let's directly welcome our guest today, the Pain Prince, Alexander James. Nice to have you here.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
So, Alexander, how are you feeling at the actual Corona times?
Uh, I'm exhausted. I find myself busier now than I did when the world was normal, I guess.
Okay.
I find myself working on a lot more projects and a lot more stuff I've always wanted to put more time into, and in doing so, I've like put way more time into them, so it just takes up the entirety of my day, plus working out, plus planning my meals. Like somehow I got busier when all this started, which is really weird to me, but I'm for it.
But it's fine not to have too much time to sit around and think about all the situations that happens at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to keep yourself distracted and stuff. And like a
Yeah.
lot of my projects that I've been working on help other people keep distracted, which is nice. But like, I don't know, I guess I'm just not a worrier in general. Like, I'm not too, like, obviously what's going on is very sad and very tragic. And
Yeah.
hopefully things get better soon. But I'm not one to like sit around and worry about stuff that I have no real control over. So, and like, I'm on a little farm kind of outside any cities or busy areas. So I don't really see the day to day of it, just what I
Mm.
see on the news. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm blissfully ignorant of what it's like for maybe people in more rural areas. So like, I don't know. I feel fine. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Let's start with something you just mentioned. You are also with your training at home at the moment. How has your training changed from Corona to home?
um, so now I end up doing a lot more body weight exercise kind of movements. My training stays just as regular, still every day, unless I really feel like I need an off day, and then with the additional like cardio maybe in the morning as well. It's just the cardio has switched to like my stationary bike in front of the TV, watching something wrestling related. And now I've cleared out part of my basement and kind of made it a home gym where I have like kind of like a multi-purpose like piece of workout equipment and then a bunch of like little free weights that don't really go up in enough weight. But if you do high enough reps, it works out just fine and really control the movement and everything. So that combined with some body weight stuff, it's just kind of hitting a different type of muscle fiber in a sense. But my training is going real well. I've accomplished some of the goals I've looked out to do so far. I haven't really skipped a beat. I haven't lost any of my muscle or anything like that. I've managed to lose a little bit of negative weight. Uh, and I've made it work for me. It's probably a healthier way to go about training for a while because I really like to lift heavy and big and strong and all that kind of stuff. Like it's like some meathead, but lifting now more for the composition of my body and to keep my body healthy and to strengthen my core and work out any kinks or any weak areas or just get my body more familiar with things like body weight movement and stuff like that. And it's probably just a healthier way to go about it for a while anyway. So it's ended up being kind of a pretty positive experience.
Sounds like a really good training plan for such a different situation than before. So let's talk about something you said at the moment. You said when you're on your bike, you look wrestling related things. What are you looking at the moment?
At the moment, I've been really sucked into the Dark Side of the Ring series. I find a lot of them pretty fascinating. And then I've been watching a lot of like, see, I don't normally like, especially when I'm on tour with WXW. I don't usually watch a lot of wrestling. I'm just so consumed by it regularly that when in my free time, I just kind of get away with it. But now there's pretty much no wrestling, so I find myself more likely to try to take as much in as I can. And lately, I've been watching a lot of like late 2000, early 2001 pay-per-views and stuff like that. So like, there's a lot of rare gems in there and a lot of fun stuff. And also, it's nostalgic for me because that's kind of the timeline of which I grew up watching wrestling and falling in love with it. So I've been watching a lot of that.
Ah, okay. I thought it could be funny if you had yet told us that you are watching Glow or something different.
No, no. I think I watched me and Jackson Stone years ago in the WXW apartment started the first season together,
Ah, okay.
Okay.
and then like once we stopped watching it together, I just stopped watching it. Like I haven't picked that back up. So I'm 5 seasons into season one.
Yeah. Ah, okay, okay. So let's go to another point that you are doing at the moment, and you are doing more often than before, I guess. You are doing a lot of streaming at the moment.
Yeah, like I've been doing it for I think at least 2 years or 3 years now.
Hmm.
Like the first year was on a previous channel. The past 2 years have been on this kind of very dedicated one, which is the Crown Twitch. And how do I explain it? Uh, Again, I've been at it for a while, but now I kind of find myself to the point where I can stream every single day for at a dedicated time and actually make a schedule. Where before maybe I was streaming 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times a week, but it was real hard to schedule it in advance because my schedule would be crazy. I didn't know when I would have time, when I wouldn't, and I had other things and priorities I'd have to do possibly. But now that everything's shut down, I'm kind of forced to stay at home, especially the first 2 weeks after I got home and I couldn't leave the house at all. Uh, I'm like, okay, well now I have as much time as I'd ever want to dedicate to this, so let's do that. And now I'm streaming almost every day, even though I probably shouldn't be because it's wearing me out. Uh, but not only that, I've been able to form it into a YouTube channel that actually launches day of recording this.
Ah, okay.
So I've been able to convert some of the videos over to that while maintaining some on the Twitch channel that are still kind of active series, and I've been able to organize it better, get a lot of work done, learn a lot more about video editing and graphic design and stuff like that. So pretty much my entire day is like, if you're split it up into portions, 3/4 of it is dedicated towards Twitch and the YouTube channel and stuff. The other fourth is dedicated to like the training and all that kind of stuff. The entire day is dedicated to eating right, but it's really consumed me in the past couple weeks I've been home, and it's kind of paid off. Like it's something that's very self-sustaining at the moment, even slightly profitable at times, which wasn't necessarily the reason why I always wanted to do it, but it's definitely helpful during hard times like this where I don't necessarily have an income. Um, but I've been able to be smart with my money, and that's been a very positive thing. And also something I really like is I always used to turn to streams and YouTube shows and stuff like that surrounding gaming to like kind of comfort me during maybe stressful times. And a lot of people have come to me in the past couple weeks to say like, "Hey, your streams really helped me out," or "Seeing this or you doing this was very very helpful." Like, "Hey, I'm going through this and this has helped in this way, and I really appreciate that." So to get to do that for other people when previous content creators have done that for me is really really cool, and not even something I necessarily intended to start with, but then it just became that. uh, it was really just a passion project and another way to express myself creatively and be able to create something. And like I've always found content creators fascinating, but for it to morph into something so positive is really cool. And then of course, like because of the Twitch channel, we've been able to donate like a pretty large amount of money so far this year to charity, which is really cool. So it's overall like all this time being stuck at home during this dark period in the world's history. I think I've really managed, with not only me but the help of everybody who views. Um, we've really been able to turn it into a real positive time in certain aspects and turn into a positive thing, which is really really cool.
Yeah, it's great because just if you are giving to others as well, I didn't thought about it because I thought you as a wrestler that can't perform at the moment, you have some money issues as well, and instead you still give some of the money that you earn to others. That's a great kind of way to share what you have.
I think some of it is almost like a guilt thing. Like I know the like a big form of revenue for content creators like streamers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Not that I would necessarily call myself a content creator because I feel like that would then be glorifying me or like putting me on a pedestal that maybe I don't deserve yet. But I know a big source of their income is donations and stuff. But to me, like I'm just a like Alexander James, tough as nails, somebody revered, all that kind of stuff. But AJ Winkler is kind of just a big old dork who likes to play video games. So it felt kind of weird accepting all donations that came in from that. So I figured, like, hey, I'll keep half, and the other half will go to charity. And like even during this time, like I found myself able to still make that work out. Like if like I've talked with Kelly about it and stuff like that, and some other people who've been like, hey man, if things start getting really bad, maybe hold off on that for a little bit so that don't go poor, things don't get worse. But so far, I've managed to keep things good so that like we can still manage to do that and help other people in the process. And during this time, all of the donations made from the channel have gone to international COVID relief funds and stuff. So trying to help any way I guess we can.
Yes, that's really great. You just talk about it. You're streaming together with Kelly sometimes and with Jon sometimes. How did you start with the idea to do such co-op streams?
Well, like when I first started streaming, I don't. So again, it was like 3 years ago on like a previous channel, but when I had first started streaming, I had been talking to Jern about it, and he kind of knew about it, and then I started a little bit, and then right before I think he started his channel, we had done like a co-op stream together. Me, him, and Dirty Dragon did a Tekken 7 co-op stream, which is still to this day is my most successful stream. So I kind of started on top and then just went downhill. Uh,
Okay.
and so that was a lot of fun, which I really recently just re-edited, and that'll be up on the YouTube channel in the coming weeks. But so we did that. We had a lot of fun together, and like we've always had this natural chemistry around one another. Like Jern's one of my best friends, and we're very, very similar people to a point where it probably bothers us both. Um, but in doing that, we just realized we had a lot of chemistry, and then we're always kind of like we're different people when we're around each other, and some people we've found to be very entertained by that. Like some people hate it to the point where like in WXW, like if me and Jern are traveling together, they make sure to isolate us from the rest of the group. But then there's some individuals who are like, man, you guys on the road are insane. Like when we had LSG and Shaheem over from Ring of Honor, they're like, I love riding with you guys. And we were both kind of like, what? Really? Like, nobody likes driving with us, and we get it. And then through that, and then just the evolution of both of us doing streams. And originally, the Crown Twitch was started as a collaboration between me and Jern, but it just got to be too hectic because he was also focused on his Twitch stream. I had mine previously. I was kind of like running everything, and then it's hard to communicate. And then if I'm going back and forth between like two continents so much, it
Yeah.
created things hectic. So then it just became a matter of like, okay, the Crown Twitch will be mine. You keep yours, and then every so often we'll collab. And since we're both home a little bit more often because of everything going on,
Yeah.
we just started doing weekly streams and just kind of like us streaming together or doing games together just kind of fit. It just kind of was a natural thing. It's just a way we know how to do things. It's never really was ever like a, oh shit, we should do this. It was kind of like we had dealt with it, you know.
Okay, so you mentioned WSW before, and I did a lot of research on your matches, and your first was against John Klinger in Gotha in
It
in early
was.
in early 2017. So can you tell us, did you call WXW to get booked, or did they call you, or how does it turn out?
It was actually set up by DJ Hyde through Combat Zone Wrestling. I had been offered a couple years into training. DJ had always said like, if you ever want to make the jump or can make the sacrifice or whatever, like I can try to help get you places overseas, but it's going to require a lot of work and effort and maybe time and money on your end. At the moment, I had a full-time job. I had an apartment. I had bills on top of bills on top of bills. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship at the time, and I finally was like gonna move out of the apartment, free up some of my bills, save up a little bit, and I was kind of like, all right, DJ, I want to make this jump. And he's like, okay, I can set up this, this, and this, and this. And originally, I was supposed to go do the Dixon camps in England, which aren't as much of a thing anymore. I was gonna do WXW, then I was gonna go back to England, and then I was gonna come home. And in total, like it was originally talked about lasting 3 months or something like that. And again, my history with CZW is very tumultuous to say the least.
Okay.
But and so is my relationship with DJ Hyde. But I will say he's always done everything he could to try to help me succeed outside of CCW. It's just he never believed that necessarily I might be able to do it or I would do it in CCW. But he set all this up for me, and then like I kept checking in and kept checking in, and months went by, and I think it ended up being like a year later he was kind of like, okay, something's happening. Not able to do the camps, not able to do the other stuff. But WXW said they'll take you for the month of February. So I was like, well, cool, let's do it. And we set it up, and I flew out on February the 1st, landed February the 2nd. I was stranded in the airport for 4 hours because there was a miscommunication and no one knew to pick me up, or no one gave me train details. Norman Harris actually came and grabbed me, who was very, very young into training at the time,
Yeah.
and that's how it all started. So it was actually originally set up by DJ Hyde, who actually made all the contacts, and WXW was willing to have me and see how it worked out.
Okay. The Dixon camps that you were talking about is All-Star tours or something like this. Is it?
Yes, I
this one?
believe it's All-Star Wrestling. Yeah, it's those.
Okay. I heard Fabian Eichner talked about it on another German wrestling podcast, Blown Up, which is run by Avalanche and by Shooter Schultz.
Yep.
So in the latest episode, he was talking about it. It sounds really fun. Like
Yeah.
he had 30 matches in 20 days or stuff like this.
I've heard a bunch of stories from him, Thatcher, my buddy Bobby Shields here back at home. I've read it in books, Daniel Bryanson's book, all that kind of stuff. It all sounds awesome, but it's not quite as busy as it used to be. One of my trainers, Drew Gulak, has done it as well. I actually talked to Tyson Kidd at one point. He had done it a little bit, and yeah, I just never got the chance. They kind of were drying up. They've lost their main ones, which they lost their main camp, which was the Butlins camp. That's with I think NGW now, and so like that just it kind of fell out, became a possibility. But it's a shame. That would have been a really fun and good learning experience.
Yeah. So let me see. 15 days later, in Munich, you got your first title match in WXW against David Starr for the Shotgun title. I heard a lot of positive things about this match. I haven't seen it yet, but I have to keep up with it. So can you tell us something about it?
That is probably one of the proudest moments in my career thus far. David, he had already been with WXW for a little bit, and when finding out I was coming over, I think I don't know for sure. No one's ever told me. I've never asked, but I think David pitched for that match because David has always really looked out for me. He's a guy that started a couple years after me, but kind of always saw me used in a negative light and saw me lose opportunities because of that. So he's always done everything he could to put someone in front of me or put me in front of someone and be like, hey, like, look at him. Don't worry about CZW stigma or anything else or how people like let me wrestle him or let me do this and watch. And I think that's kind of what he did at WXW, because it's also before we went over for that match, we did a little build for it at CZW the month before I left, and we actually wrestled a match there, and he asked DJ for it, and it was a fun 12-15 minute match. And that match in Munich was real special to me. The crowd had never seen me before, didn't know who I was. That started the match not giving a crap about me, and at the very end of it, me and Starr got a standing ovation, which was really, really cool. And that doesn't happen often. It never happened often to me, and it was really, really nice. And that match is actually, to me, what got me, the quote-unquote job I have there now, and is why I've been there the past 4 years. It started that weekend in Gotha, where they paired me up with John for the weekend. And John Klinger, regardless of like any issues he's had with other people or WXW or whatever, John's like always treated me super well. And that weekend he came up to me and he was like, oh, like I saw your stuff here, there. Like he looked me up, which was crazy to me. And I was like, why would this guy look me up? And he had seen my match with Starr. He knew at the time I was doing a pile driver on the apron. So he was like, we'll do this, and then we'll do this. And then the next night, so he was pitching Walter ideas to do with me in the main event the next night. And Walter was kind of like, we don't even know this, dude. Like, come on. But we had a really good match in Gotha.
Yeah.
The next night, we were the main event. We had another really solid match. And afterwards, like, Bad Bones said everybody I did great. Walter came up to me and was kind of like, I won't say the extent of what he did because it's not necessarily rude to other people, but it was a private conversation. But he was thoroughly happy with how I conducted myself and how I went about things in my mind for wrestling, and was kind of like, we don't have a guy like you. Would you care if I went to the office and asked if we'd bring you back maybe more regularly? And I was like, absolutely. And John was kind of like, yeah, you should talk to them about him. And Axel Dieter Jr., now Marcel Battel at the time, came up and was like, you're super good fit to our locker room. You're like us. You have the same mind for it. You wrestle the same way. You treat professional wrestling the same way. The Mac, the same thing, came up and said that. Me and Jurgen were already starting to connect a bit. Uh, and because I'd actually driven with him there, but him and Johnny Evers were speaking Dutch in the front of the 9-seater, so I just kept my mouth shut because I had no idea what they were saying.
Okay.
And so fast forward to Munich, Germany. I hadn't heard anything from the office. No one had said anything. But after that match with Starr, I came to the back and everybody was like, I remember being really upset about the match. There was a couple little things that went wrong that I don't even remember now, and I can't pinpoint in the match. But I'm very, very hard on myself, and I was in the back, and I was just kind of, I was I wasn't being standoffish or anything like that, but like I thanked everybody. I went around, I asked Max how he felt, and then I went and sat down for a second and was kind of like to myself, like, I can do better. And Felix Kohlenberg actually came up to me. He's like, hey, we in the office have talked, and like, or actually, it was actually the next day. He came up and he's like, hey, we really enjoyed your match with David the night before. Us members of the office have talked. Like, we would like you to maybe come back. Let's talk about another tour, that kind of thing, see what we can do. And so it was, Bad Bones, Walter, and Starr. They're like really big parts of why I have been there for the past, again, going on almost 4 years now.
Okay, sounds cool. So after that, when I remember correctly, we had a short story with Francis Caspin, who used to be a trainee at the academy at this time. And I guess it was about a disrespectful behavior of Francis Caspin, when I
Yeah.
remember correctly. Um,
So, so Francis at the
yeah,
time was being followed by this German docu-series who films episodes about people and strange career choices. And so they were following on Francis about wanting to become a pro wrestler. And Jacoby came up and he's like, we need a big, bad foreign bad guy for him to work with as a big, ending thing for this like docu they're doing. So we would like the next feature event it to be you two, and you work with him
yeah,
because you're more seasoned. You can work with him. We have confidence in you, which again was kind of cool because this is only my second tour, and we're gonna build it around how you act, swarmy, arrogant, whatever. Just make it a simple story, and figured you'd be able to like help carry this load with him like for this little docu series, and I was all about it, and I thought that was really cool, and I felt real good about that, and it was a lot of fun because I love Francis to death.
so how it feels to be a trainer in the WXW Academy?
And that's another highlight of my career. A lot of my highlights have come from WXW, but
Yeah,
I've always been very opinionated about wrestling, maybe to a fault, and I always have felt things should be done a certain way. And I recognize that in today's society, wrestling is maybe like a broad horizon of colors, right? It's a rainbow. It's not just one color anymore, which is fine.
yes, yes,
I dislike the majority of the other palettes and the other paints used to paint pro wrestling, but I recognize that they have their place and they're for certain niches of audience. But at the same time, everybody starts on a white canvas, or whatever your surface is that you're painting on. I don't know arts and crafts, but the underlying values of pro wrestling, no matter what, should be the same if you want to continue to grow and continue to and hook the audience and get a true emotional investment. And so I've always been very opinionated about that. I've always given my opinion to people. I've always kind of asked me, what my thoughts were. And when I was younger, maybe I didn't even wait to be asked. I just kind of went to them. I was like, what about this, 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 and this, and this? And WXW is the first time where someone like, you know, I think it was Walter that asked me like, hey, would you want to hold one of the training classes? And he watched me and he was like, yeah, you have a good mind for this. And like, although sometimes you over explain things and you give them so many things to remember and they can't hold on to it, like you really like, you're very like critical about things and you see the finer points and the little things of what would make it better, and you have a good critical mind for it. And because of that, he appointed me to be like one of the more lead advanced trainers with him and Thatcher, which was an honor. And it's been a very rewarding experience. Like Joey Mercurio once told me, when you train someone, you learn everything twice. So not only did you learn it the first time, but now you have to teach somebody it. And then when you teach somebody that, it reinforces what you know and reminds you of what you know, and you're less likely to forget it or make that mistake. So I feel like I've grown as a performer by being an instructor, and it's brought me so many like valuable experiences. And it's really cool to see people like Norman Harris, like who again was very young in his training when I met him, and then I took over a good bit of his training, grow to do what he's been doing and exploring the world and wrestling throughout WXW and throughout Europe and then Canada and Mexico before this happened, or maybe canceled because of this happened. But like that makes me very proud, and to be able to pass on a lot of the things that people have taught me that were far more successful than I am to others is a really cool feeling. And it's really rewarding, and you know that's kind of how I want my career to go. I want to be the guy who's been doing this for a while and has had success and has done the things he set out to do, but can now pass it forward, and people look at him to to help out or that kind of thing, like whether it's agent matches or um, run seminars or whatever it may be. And I've gotten, because of the school and being a trainer there and people coming in learning with me and going back to their home promotion, I've also gotten to do a lot of seminars in like Italy, Holland, I think Belgium. I got contacted about possibly Brazil and Russia recently.
Okay.
So it's been a very very rewarding experience, and it's a love. Uh, it's a it's a part of the business I didn't realize I'd love as much as I have, and it's been really good so far, and I've really really enjoyed it. I'm very proud to be one of their trainers, one of their longer running trainers at the moment, actually.
I remember was, I guess, World Tag Team League 2018, I think, when I was a part of the media center of the WXW. Um, we had the chance to visit your training,
I remember, yeah.
um, and even me as a normal wrestling fan, I would say, learned such a lot of things uh, just in these, what was it, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Um, so I just can recommend, if you're a wrestler and you're listening to this and you need a school to go to Essen, go to WXW Academy. It's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I definitely like, and a lot of people don't know this, but like WXW's put out the video, like even Canyon Seaman, you know, director or whatever of NXT and WWE developmental system, has said like, hey, if you want to be a pro wrestler and you want to get a look, like probably the best place to go would be the WXW Academy. Like he's put it over really huge. As far as I know, WXW is the only independent wrestling school in the world where head of WWE development has said like, hey, you should go there. So, and to me to be a member of that school makes me very proud. And now our head trainer is Robert Dreiska, aka
Yeah.
Avalanche, and he's incredible. Like he has a very very good mind for it. I'm very happy he's our new head coach. He's wonderful. We don't always see on eye to eye on how the story should necessarily be told. I mean, 80% of the time we do, but we have our little differences, but neither of our differences are ever wrong. We can always argue each other's point. We always see each other's point. It's just our preferences and going about it. And I always value Robert's opinion in my matches. And if there's a different way I could have maybe gone about it, maybe it doesn't fit me, but sometimes it does. And Robert's another guy who, like, when I first started coming over and was doing well and was training at the school, he would be a guy that was, he's not too proud or anything like that. He's been wrestling just as long as I have, and he'd be like, "Hey, we're on this town show. Will you watch my match? Do you have a sec?" I'll be like, "Yeah," and we'll talk about it. We'll chit chat, and we'll discuss things back and forth. And also, he's another guy that like uh, appreciates the classics of wrestling and wrestling how it was back in the day and how it should translate to now and stuff like that. So the fact that the students now have Robert Dreiska as head trainer is super valuable. He dedicates so much time to the school, even now with the coronavirus going on and everything, and the school being shut down. The kids are still getting an education. Like we have a private way of communicating with the entire advanced class and beginners class and
Okay.
stuff. He's given them things to do. He set up like a private seminar for them. I think WXW like didn't release it, but informed that that's what they did. But like he, I'm not gonna say it just in case it is private or whatever. But he, a very big, phenomenal trainer in the industry. He set up like a private little seminar with them.
I guess it
He,
was was it the Dr. Tom Pritchard?
yes, yes, yes.
Yes,
Okay, so they
it
did
was
announce
was
it.
was official by WXW. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, he set up with his contacts a seminar for just the students with Dr. Tom, which is incredible. Dr. Tom, helped train The Rock. He trained Kurt Angle. He trained Vince McMahon when Vince McMahon had to wrestle. He trained Mark Henry. He trained the majority of FCW. Like the guy when you think of pro wrestling trainers. And he was super cool, super great. It was a great learning experience. Like, he's really making an effort. He's making sure all the students are able to contact him to send matches. So it was a phenomenal get for WXW to bring him over from Austria.
That's really cool. So let's pretend there's an investor and he comes to you and say, here's 50,000 euros or dollars or whatever. What would you improve first in the academy if you have to improve something?
If I had to improve something, so the first thing I would do is make myself assistant head trainer and give myself a salary so that way I could be in Germany all year long. That would be great. Then I would give Avalanche a pay raise because he probably deserves it. I have no idea what he makes, but he probably should make more just for the sheer fact of how hard he works. And then I'd give Jay Skillett more money, and then when anybody asks where'd the money go, I'd just be like, "What money?" No. But yeah, those are the first things I would do. And I don't know, like, the academy is so well put together. Like, for anyone who's seen the inside of it, it's one ring, it's some wrestling mats off to the side, corners are padded, there's some weight equipment. If anything, just for my own selfish reasons, like besides giving myself a job, I would probably invest more in the weight equipment and workout stuff there. But at the same time, for a wrestling school, that's not even necessary because there's so many people who are like, oh, well, I'll get in shape by training to be a wrestler. And that's just not the case. You need to put in 10 times more work outside of wrestling training than you do in wrestling training, just on yourself. So I almost don't want to give that answer because then it's a crutch. People will be like, well, I'll work out before training or I'll go in there to work out. And they'll half-ass it. They'll only do it for a couple minutes because their excuse will be, well, I have wrestling training. I don't want to be exhausted. And then I'll get mad. So I don't know. Maybe put some money into maybe soundproofing a little bit, so maybe we can train a little later at night because we can't go past like 10:30 with bumps and stuff like that because it makes too much noise and it's a residential area. So maybe something like that. Some more weight equipment. I'll just go with the selfish answer. And then again, like, even though it was a partial joke, I would maybe give more money to Dreiska and someone as an assistant trainer and Jan so that there is just a very consistent training group that kids are constantly with. Because sometimes when I'm not there, or like for a while, again, the lead trainers were Walter, me, and Thatcher. And two of those are Americans that are not there most of the year. So it's kind of head on Walter and whoever else can come in to kind of cover some classes. So like maybe like a second like assistant head coach to make sure it's constant consistency. Because even though Avalanche puts in there a lot of work and time and stuff, training is exhausting. Even the work outside of it, like all the detailed back end stuff he has to do, that's very tough. But honestly, running a 3-hour class every day or every other day, it's surprisingly exhausting. It takes a lot of effort because it's not only physically are you doing stuff with the students, but also it's a lot of thought and a lot of motion in it and a lot of racking your brain. And like, I know people give crap for people that work in offices and just think for a living and stuff. Yeah. But that's emotions and thinking that's very taxing. It is exhausting. It does require energy. Yeah, it's not as hard as building a house maybe physically, but mentally it's draining as well. And I feel like running class can kind of do both. So maybe provide him a little bit more help. But other than that, like, I just think the school's in a really good place, and I don't get too involved in the financial end of it because it's just not my place. But I would say those are my answers. Maybe a little bit more weight equipment, give Betel or Dreiska a raise, maybe get another full-time trainer in there, if not Jan or Jay Skillett, and then keep Jay Skillett around a little bit more, especially for the sheer fact of his being his personal training kind of coaching and stuff. He brings in a tremendous value to the school because if any students have questions, they can always go to him and he'll sort that out right then and there because Jan has put a ton of work into that school as well. I keep going back and forth between names. I'm sorry. Jay Skillett has put a ton of work into that school as well, and like helping students. And when Walter was kind of transitioning out, we didn't have Avalanche yet, and he was kind of running everything. And he deserves a lot of credit. And of course, Tassilo being the president of the school and doing all the back end stuff. Like, I know Tassilo is the busiest man in the world, but. And then again, Jay, the personal training knowledge he brings to the students and everything, and helping them with their questions, he still helps me. Like, I feel like I have a very good basis of knowledge for building muscle and getting in physical shape and all that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, I still have questions or something maybe nags me or doesn't feel right, and I always go to Jay, and he always sets me straight. He's just a fountain he's a fountain of information in an industry, being the fitness industry, that has a fountain of bullshit that it's always pouring out and convincing people is the right way to do things, or this is the new magic thing, or this is what you have to do. And 9 times out of 10 of it, it's all absolute garbage nonsense that isn't true. It's like people are like reading studies about like why this is the way it should be done, but they don't actually know how to read a scientific study. So they're just seeing the things that they want to see, and it's nonsense. And you can always find a study that counteracts it anyway. But Jan or Jay actually went to university. He knows the facts. He knows what works. He's done it. He's done it with clients. So, and if anybody needs it that isn't trying to be a professional wrestler, he has his own online coaching firm, which is Fresh Coaching. So you can find him on Instagram and stuff. And
Yes.
incredibly valuable. And again, I myself, a professional athlete, I go to him for advice all the time. And we have very different body types. We work out differently. We value different things in our training. He still helps me out. He still knows what I need to do to succeed, and he's helped me tremendously over the past couple of years that I've known him. So, man, I just went on a whole tangent, just putting over Avalanche and Jay Skillett.
So there's one member of our podcast group here. It's Daniel, who's also does the training with Jay Skillett, and he's pretty excited about it. So
Hell yeah.
guess he's you're right. So let's move on a bit to March 2018. That was your first 16 karat gold, and I can remember some weeks before, or I don't know, 3 months or 4 months before it. I've started a petition online.
Oh, it was you.
Yes, it was me. To get you into 16 karat gold. Do you know how this how the office reacted to this, or?
I know Jacoby at the time saw it because he brought it up to me. Because things have been talked about, and I thought I had put in a pretty solid body of work at that point, and the office knew, and I let them know, like, hey, if you're thinking of people for Carat, I want to be in Carat, obviously.
Okay.
And I made it very well known, not obnoxious, not being a jerk about it. But I was like, looking back at it, if they hadn't included me in 16 Carat, I would understand. I think I thought it was a little higher up in the card than I actually was, or maybe I was more of a part of things than I actually was. Like I was still very new. I was still, cutting my teeth into the company and stuff like that. But I was a man with goals, and that 16 Carat had been one of mine since I had first started wrestling. When I first started wrestling, I got to be around Sami Callihan a bit when he had just won it, or had just been a part of it, and he came home, and I was like, oh, and WXW started working with CZW, and I was like, man, one day I would love to be over there. One day I would love to be part of 16 Carat. And just through being with CZW and kind of my tumultuous relationship there, like that goal kind of slid away. I never thought I would actually get able to do it. I was starting to really doubt it. So then I got to WXW, and then I was like, I would put in some good matches. I had the match with David Starr and the matches with Bad Bones, and I thought I was really starting to come into my own and learn who Alexander James was, and figure out who I am truly. Because I thought I had all the answers going there, and then people like Jacoby and Tassilo and Dennis, they all kind of were like, questioned me, which I'd never been questioned before, and that helped me really grow. So I was ready to go. And then I think Jacoby had joined me for one of my streams, and afterwards or beforehand, he had mentioned, he's like, oh yeah, 16 Carat. He's like, did you know there's a petition for you to be in 16 Carat? And I did know, but obviously I was going to tell him. I was like, oh really? I didn't know that. And so they saw it, and they understood that like I wanted to be in it. They understood some people wanted to be in it, and I think it was a matter of like, we got another spot. He's been wrestling a long time. I think it was a matter of like looking back in hindsight, they were kind of like, all right, some people want it. He wants it. He's been working hard. He's been doing great for us. Let's give him a bone. Let's see how he does. And it was one of the personally, professionally, and just all around. It was one of the most rewarding weekends of my life. And so thank you for starting that petition. Thank you for everyone who let the company know that they wanted me in it. I hope I didn't let you guys down. It was a lot of fun. And Carat this year was a special moment for me as well. Because like I said, I thought, looking back, I feel like in 2018, they were kind of giving me a bone. And let's see what he's got. Let's see what he can do. Let's see if he can make the most of it. And this year, I feel like when I was entered in it, it was like a no-brainer. It's like, well, of course he's going to be in it. Like,
Yes.
he's one of our guys, and he's quickly becoming one of our top guys. And so to go from, hey, let's give him a bone, to not only being like a duh kind of choice, but for some people after the first night being like, wow, my pick to win is out, was really really cool to me.
So let's slide in with another question that wasn't written down before. You mentioned that you have to find yourself, or you used to have to find yourself when you studied in WXW. Um, I remember seeing you the first time at the send off for Axel Dieter Jr.
Mm-hmm.
against Kim Wei. Um, and you used to come out to the like metal version of
Yeah,
the Reigns of Castamere.
yeah,
Uh,
people really like that. They were very upset when that got put away.
why did you change it?
It was a suggestion from the office, because metal music, it didn't seem like it fit me. It's also copyrighted music.
Okay.
And now, obviously, with WXW, no one has copyrighted music. Everyone has a specific licensed music by the company. So that was part of it. It didn't quite fit, and like it was a cool song, but it didn't necessarily fit the tone that maybe Alexander James should have. And it was one of those things where I didn't want to change it, but if they believed in it that much, I trusted them and was like, okay, let's find something else. So Dennis kind of sent me on a quest, like, hey, this is how we kind of see it. This is how we kind of see you. Let's go look, see what maybe you can find. And that's when I found the next entrance, and yeah, so it was a cooperative decision, kind of like a compromise, if you will, a little bit.
Okay.
So let's jump to nearly present. And let's talk about the last carat season, I will call it. From carat 2019 to carat 2020, you have had a long run beside Orfeo and Simmons as the crown.
Mm-hmm.
And in this year's carat and the months before, you both fought against each other. What do you remember? What was your favorite match in this year? Can you mention it?
Favorite match this year, specifically with Urine, or just this past kind of year with the company?
The whole year, not
Uh,
just with Mjörn.
I think my favorite match this year in WXW, there's a couple, but the first one that pops to mind is in Dresden, me and Tyler Colton versus Urine Simmons and Axel. Or the rotation, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No problem.
Even though I do it throughout the matches, but that's okay. That match flowed perfectly. Everything hit the reaction it wanted to. When I came to the back, guys like Lucky Kid and Elia and Andy, they were all Avalanche. They're all like blown away. Like they all really liked it, and we're very proud of us. And we're like, man, that like hit every spot. And like apparently, like I'm not gonna say them because I don't want to embarrass them, but a couple of guys in the back were kind of like going up and down the back, like, oh man, this is crazy. Oh, it's going like, oh, that hit perfect, that went well. Like, and like even there was even some hiccups in the match, and we just covered it well, and like and passed it by and fixed it and corrected it. And even like the match, like that was one of my favorite matches. We had a lot of matches leading up to that one, and that night everything just came together perfect. And every moment we tried to create flourished, and the Dresden crowd was just on fire for it.
Yeah.
At least how I remember it, and how everybody in the back told me, and the reactions afterwards. Like maybe I'm a little biased, obviously, but I think that's the first one that comes to mind.
How was your feeling after the barbed wire steel cage match in January? How was that for you?
Defeated in a lot of ways. Obviously, I lost.
Yeah.
But I was a little grumpy. I'm not gonna go too much into it because it's very recent. I try not to talk too much, quote unquote, inside baseball with matches that are maybe a little bit more recent.
Yeah.
But like, I thought I didn't bring the best me that I could, and I'm not sure if it was the fact that I flew in the day before, or if I had butterflies, which doesn't happen to me too often anymore. Like everybody talks about how nervous they get before matches and stuff. That doesn't happen to me too often anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like 9 times out of 10, I'm just like, yeah, this is what I do. Like, I got this. Like, I don't do a lot of things in life well, but this is one of them. Uh, and so maybe the butterflies going into it, knowing there's a little bit more extra responsibility. It was my first main event on a marquee show for WXW, and this is them finally being like, hey, you're one of our top guys now. You're one of the guys we trust, and especially in the spot where we don't have really Ilya anymore. We don't really have Walter anymore, at least not regularly. We don't have Axel Dieter Jr. anymore. We don't, like Axeman's gone, been gone for years. Carson Beck has been gone. We've lost a lot of the core top guys, which is just the nature of pro wrestling. The wheels got to keep turning. People got to keep coming up, and some people go away, some people go back down, that kind of thing. Andy has to leave the main events for a little bit. He's been there for a while. It's time for other guys. And so this was them being like, Yearn's in that back in that spot. Now it's time to get AJ there. So there's a lot of pressure. I was exhausted. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself. I think things were overfought. There was also a lot of variables going into the match that, again, I'm not putting blame on anybody. It was still a great match. There is variables going into it that were out of anybody's control that caused a little hindrances. And at the end of the day, me and Yor worked really well together. It was a great match. Looking back, like again, I don't know anyone who didn't say it was a good or great match. Again, not to get too much inside baseball because I try to be a little respectful of the business in a sense. Like I'm not trying to be
no problem. Yes, if you haven't said it, I would have said it. It was not a bad match. It was a good match. But I guess as a worker, as a wrestler, you want to get more of yourself, like you said. You're not in the best situation for yourself. And if you don't have these butterflies that often, I guess they hit you even harder if you get them once.
Yeah, and like working with Yearn, I'm never nervous. Me and Yearn know each other. I think I'm not going to speak for him, but like me and him can go out there without saying a word, and we know what's going to do what. We know how to challenge jive. We know how to do it. Like working with Yearn's a day off, no matter the position. But I think I just put a lot of pressure on myself, and it put me in a weird headspace. And I was in that headspace throughout the match, and then I was in a headspace afterwards. And I think if we had gone out there and gotten a standing ovation, and the roof literally fell off because of how loud people were applauding, I would have already been in the mood where I'm going to come back to the back and be like, I could have done better. So like I don't even know too much of the critical response to the match. I know a lot of people were like, "Hey, it was good." A lot of people seem to like it. A lot of people tweeted that they liked it. But like again, the memory or feeling I have after before the match or of the match is just me kind of being in the a poor headspace going in, excited but a poor headspace, and just kind of I think jinxing it for himself, and afterwards feeling like, no, I can do better. I can do a lot better. If I'm going to be a top guy here, I'm going to do better.
Okay, so let's go to the 60 carat tournament. You faced Jeff Cobb in the first one. How was to face Jeff Cobb instead of someone you should face? Yeah, already face. I guess it was. That you think Leo Rush should be our opponent.
Yes.
Yeah, originally it was supposed to be me and Lil Rush, which is real cool because that's another person I was around when they first started. They started here in Maryland, and I was around him before he was even doing matches and stuff. I helped get him one of his first like out-of-state bookings even, and he was on the road with me. Like, great dude, always stayed humble, phenomenally naturally gifted and talented, just great overall. I was very much looking forward to it. And then I got canceled. I understand it. I don't mind it. It is what it is. You can put me in there with anybody, and I'm gonna make it work. And then I was told it was Jeff Cobb, and I was kind of like, well, I wasn't told. I was informed when everybody else was informed, and I was like, let's do this. I was like super pumped because while working with Leo is kind of an unknown for me, I've gotten to work with Jeff Cobb before, and it was under bad circumstances. Yet we still made it work, and it was a lot of fun. And he remembered it. I remembered it. He came in like ready to have some fun and make me look as good as possible. And we're like, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I have nothing but nice things to say about Jeff Cobb. And also, a lot of people, I think, once they saw me and Jeff, were kind of like, oh, maybe that's a better matchup because AJ Russell's, he's 6'3", 230. He's a bigger guy. He's not going to fly around the ring with Leo, but Cobb isn't going to fly around either. Maybe there's just big boys, doing big boy stuff. Granted, I'm not as big and jacked as Jeff Cobb is. He's built like a goddamn refrigerator, but it ended up being a very, very positive thing, and also added a little intrigue to it too. I feel like, because then before maybe people thought like, oh, the WWE guys obviously going to advance in the tournament. But now with him out and somebody else in, I think some people were like, well, like AJ can't go out first round, right? And like, but I mean, Jeff Cobb's AEW, but is he? But like, is a replacement with a play? And so like, I think it adds some intrigue to it. So it was fun.
Yeah, it was great to see. It was a really nice match to see you both inside the ring.
Yeah, and anything I was like, hey, like, again, I don't want to talk too inside of it because I try to toe the line of like giving too much away, but at the same time keeping mystique. But you know, it's 2020. But anything that I would have been like, with this, like Cobb was open ears for everything, and it was he's a wonderful, tremendous human being, great to work with. He's one of the most talented people I've ever been in the ring with.
Fine. So in the last year, you did a lot of tag team action, a lot of singles action. Can you say if you prefer one of these, tag team or singles wrestling?
I think I can say this for both. I think I can't speak for Jurn, but also I feel like I can. And I think if he was here, he'd be like, you know me. But then he would be like, you can't, no, he can't speak for me. But I think me and both Jurn have aspirations as single stars, but we love teaming together, and we had a lot of fun with it. And house shows or town shows for WXW, the ones that aren't taped and stuff like that, we had so much fun. We have great chemistry against each other or teaming with each other. And I know both in the future have aspirations of outside WXW and even maybe eventually in WXW one day, you know, being together again, maybe. But I know both of us, our main goals in this profession are as single stars. But if there's anyone that I was going to be tied with and be a tag team with, it would be Jurn, and I think his answer would be similar. So although I prefer to be a single superstar, in a sense, I love teaming with Jurn, and if that's something that was quote unquote I had to fall back on or ended up being the way it was going, I wouldn't complain about it because I think it was a lot of fun. And it was great to learn that other side of professional wrestling because tag team wrestling is an art very different than singles wrestling. There's a lot of more things moving and playing, and a lot of things you gotta work with. Being a tag team wrestler is in a lot of senses more difficult than being a singles wrestler, and it can be challenging. So it was really cool to learn that aspect of it, you know, firsthand.
Okay, so when I did some research about you, I found out that you had a great history in CZW. And then I remember that a lot of really famous wrestlers today, like Adam Cole, Drew Gulak, Penelope Ford, David Starr, Mia Yim, Dave and Jake Christ, MJF, Leo Rush, and of course Alexander James, are from the Comet Zone Academy, who's more known to be this hardcore wrestling stuff. But none of these people I mentioned is famous to be a hardcore wrestler. It's more like a technical wrestling style. It's I was wondering how this got up because you know CCW is more famous for hardcore than technical wrestling.
So just to set the record straight, I am not actually like a full Combat Zone Wrestling Academy student.
Okay.
I was actually originally trained in EWA Pain Factor in Maryland by a man of the name the Baltimore Butcher Blood. He was actually my original trainer. There were some other trainers there at the time. Sean Cannon, who's from MCW, helped out with me as well. But like some of the other trainers I wasn't really involved with, or like after a day or two, I was kind of like, no offense to them, I'm not gonna name names. So I was kind of like, they don't know what they're doing. Like I can just see it. And this is my first day. Baltimore Butcher Blood, he did. And he really helped me. But after a while of training there, DJ Hyde would sometimes come down to the school and help out. And he was like, if you ever want to come to CCW and train, you can train.
Okay.
And then so I wasn't old enough to go up there by myself on a school night because I was 17. So Rich Swan would get in the car with me. And just knowing that if he didn't, I couldn't go up there. So Rich Swan volunteered. I would go down, pick him up, drive all the way up to Philadelphia, just to be able to train for like 2 hours or so, or an hour and a half, however long I could, because then I'd immediately have to drive back down and drop off Rich at work and then go home for school. So I started doing that, and I kind of really got finished up. I say like Drew Gulak really kind of finished my training, because even though I only got to go to a dozen of his classes, or maybe a couple dozen, I don't even remember. over the years. I then started working with him at CZW and was part of his stable, and he really looked out for me then. So to put it in hindsight, I started in Maryland, and then I kind of got finished up at CZW in a sense. But you never really finished training, so I got finished up enough to where I wouldn't make a fool of myself in the ring, I guess. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons working alongside Drew. But the reason that is for a long time the CW school was paired with the Shikara school. And so you'd have, John Zandig in there training, and then you'd also on other days have Chris Hero or Krakenbush running training. And then it would separate, and DJ Hyde ran things, and then also, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and that really, really bothers me. But there's another trainer as well. But the thing is, even with hardcore wrestling or deathmatch wrestling, you still got to learn how to wrestle. Regardless what you say about hardcore wrestling, deathmatch wrestling, it's not personally my taste. But Ricky Shane Page can work his ass off. Masada is one of the best wrestlers I've ever been in the ring with. He can work his ass off. A lot of the guys, Danny Havoc can work his ass off. So you still got to be a wrestler. So you don't really train to be hardcore. And at the time, CZW was bought by DJ Hyde, and they were transitioning away from just being an American deathmatch indie company to trying to be more of a hybrid style and have more junior heavyweights, have more proper heavyweights, have more of a bit of everything for everybody, and kind of make the hardcore wrestling maybe one match a show, that kind of thing. So because of that, the school obviously is going to be more geared towards everything. If you want to come in, you want to be a deathmatch wrestler, eventually we'll get you there, but you got to learn how to wrestle first. And of course, when I was coming there, even though DJ Hyde was lead trainer, Drew really ran everything. And then there's a period of time it was Drew, Sammy, and Adam Cole that ran everything. And then after they left to do other things, Drew was still running stuff. And so that's kind of the reason that it puts out more pure wrestlers rather than necessarily like deathmatch guys, because one, it takes a special type of person to want to and be willing to do that. But two, you can't start learning that. You don't start wrestling training by getting hit with something or going through barbed wire or something. So that's kind of the reason. And that was definitely a very long list you named there. But also, I will say some of that, although I know it's out there, some of that's a little misconstrued. Mia Yim came from CZW, wasn't trained at CZW. MJF, he was a Russell Pro guy. He was not trained at CZW. He attended a couple trainings. He did the Dojo War shows, stuff like that.
Okay.
MJF is not a CZW student. And I know he wouldn't want that out there. He was originally trained by Pat Buck, and Pat Buck deserves credit for that. A couple other names on there I think of. All of them way more famous than me. But it's funny, I have a story about MJF because we're still friends to this day. But when he started coming to Dojo Wars and was part of this like little goofy tag team, and Dojo Wars is kind of like a student show for CZW, at least it used to be. And he would come down and do that, and I would go up to help out and just kind of get more ring time and wrestle as much as I can. And even when I didn't work for CZW anymore, just because either Drew ran it or a friend of mine, so I'd always be able to go up there, have fun, and work guys like Wheeler Yuta, stuff like that. And one day it was me and another guy versus MJF and his partner at the time, and MJF pulled me aside. And again, it sounds so ridiculous now just looking at where we're at in our careers, and how people know him as a person. Not to give anything away about MJF, what you see is what you get. But he pulled me aside and was like, yeah, so like, I want to say I really appreciate this. And I'm kind of like, what the hell are you talking about? We're going to work a tag match in front of like 20 people. Like, I was confused. He's like, I came to, came to a Cage of Death once, and like, you were on the show. Like this means a lot to me that I get to work with you. And I'm kind of like, I just kind of was like, what? Like, it's so sweet that he's being so respectful, but like, come on, like, especially me at the time, like, you don't gotta butter me up. Not that he was buttering me up. I think he was being genuine. But like, looking at that now just makes me laugh, because now he's main eventing pay-per-views, and I'm like, I'm doing well for myself. I love my spot with WXW and stuff like that. But like, it's just no questioning that he's a superstar right now, one of the shining spots of pro wrestling. And like, a couple years ago, he said that to me. I'm kind of like, what? And just to think about that is just funny to me.
Okay, so let's come to the last official question of this interview, and of course it's about the elephant in the room. You told on one of your streams that you were backstage at WWE. So how was that come up? And is there any contact today to WWE or AEW because of a tryout or anything like
Oh,
this?
so I don't think this is an elephant in the room. Maybe it is. I didn't mean it for it to be misconstrued that way. So maybe this is a good way to settle the score on this, or kind of set the record straight. When I said like I've been backstage at WWE, I've done extra work, which is not this glorious position like it used to be, right? If
Okay.
and it was years ago. Like the last time I did extra work was 4 years ago at least, before I was ever at WXW. So what extra work is when WWE comes to town, if they need somebody to be a security guard or they need somebody to make Braun Strowman look like a monster and get their ass kicked, they have at every show, every Raw and SmackDown, even some house shows, they have a group of 5 to 10 local wrestlers be there
Okay.
for security guards, whatever it may be. Hell, MJF was once a security guard at an NXT show, and Samoa Joe pushed him. Like hell, so like stuff like that. Hell, I was like Braun Strowman and stuff was like a rosebud. Alicia Fox was a rosebud at one point. Years ago, I was a rosebud. Like it's not this super over like glorious position, you know what I mean? Like it used to be like if you got called to do extra work, they might be giving a look to you and you know you might be looking to get a job, but that's decades past. That's just not the case anymore. It's like Adam Cole once explained to me. It's the first step to the opportunity to get an opportunity to get a job, but it's not. You know, a lot of people. Oh my
Okay.
God, especially in my area, so many people will like be like, oh, I got a paycheck from such and such, guys. Today's a big day, and they'll make it like vague, post about it on Facebook, and anybody is actually worth their weight in wrestling actually just laughs at them. If they're younger, we get it. They were excited. Not gonna say it, but there's guys who are like 10 plus years in who are like, oh, got this or got that, gonna do that, and we just laugh at them because it's like, dude, just take a look at yourself. Like it's great, it's cool, it's a very warming experience. I've gotten to do a lot of cool things being an extra. I got to learn from a lot of people. I got to talk to a lot of people I had no business talking to. But like it's you know take be a professional, act like you've been to the dance before. Don't go ranting about it on Facebook and stuff like that. And when you're just there to like help out, if you get an opportunity, that's cool. If you just learn some stuff, that's cool. But like some people like online treat it like they're getting signed. Like legit will be like, oh man, this is the first step, I'm on my way, or something like that. And again, if they're younger, they don't know any better, that's fine. I'm glad that they're that passionate. If you've been doing this for 15 years and you think you're finally getting your shot and you're telling everybody about it, and then like booking yourself as former this or whatever, which some people have done,
Okay.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Get over it. But that's what I meant by being backstage. And again, that was like 4 years ago. So there's no talks about that kind of stuff. And even then, like I had tryout matches and stuff like that. But that's just something they do, for guys before SmackDown or whatever. If you're an extra work, they just kind of like, okay, if we have time today, we'll do tryout matches and we'll take a look if we can. And like some days they didn't really have time, but like maybe a guy like Goldust or something would be like, oh no, like dude, I'll watch it for him. Like they're here, might as well. So like that happened once when I was there. I think Goldust was kind of like, hey, like I'll watch their matches. Like if you guys don't have time, I don't want them to be here in their gear and have their hopes up and not get it. And he was super cool, great to everybody, had positive feedback, give good critiques. Such a stellar guy. Goldust is so underrated too as a human being, and just at least my interactions with him. So that's kind of the extent of anything as far as tryout or anything like that. Again, it's just extra work. I was never like backstage because they're like, hey, you want to come and have a talk? No, nothing like that. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. But it was a great learning experience, and it was definitely valuable, and it definitely motivates you too to be in that big, huge environment because you don't realize how big the WWE is until you're there backstage and you see the hundreds of people working on it and how big the backstage is and the production value and all the cameras they have and the equipment and everything that goes into it beforehand and afterwards and how busy the guys are during the day. It's nuts. It was definitely motivating, but and as far as like any contact with AEW or WWE, to be perfectly honest, I've never had any uh, legitimate contact with either.
Okay.
I don't really have any contact with AEW. I don't have any contact with WWE, and I think I don't necessarily know what that is. Like I think I'm phenomenally talented, obviously, but like just it hasn't happened. And I think I'm in a weird spot where I'm an American that spends most of his time in Europe, so I'm not on an American's company's radar necessarily, but at the same time, also in Europe, I'm the American, so I'm not like the guy that you can be like, oh, like we can use him on a regular or whatever. Like it's mostly like appearances or whatever. So I think I'm in a weird position as well. But like, it takes time as well. Like I'm not bitter about it. I'm not upset about it. And even, it is what it is. Like I just I'm cool with it. I'm fine with where my career is at. I'm fine with where my career is at the moment. I'm happy with the opportunities coming up and that I'm getting. I'm happy where it's headed, and I'm just working for more and more and more. I'm a guy that's never going to be satisfied, so I'm going to keep going. And although like I haven't necessarily had any contact with those two companies, there have been some larger promotions in the past year and a half that have, you know, sent little feelers, or people on my behalf that work there that have sent little feelers to them, and they've played around with it. So, you know, I'm not gonna name any names or anything like that. But as far as like the quote unquote big two, WWE and AEW, like I have really no contact. So it is what it is.
It's a shame. It's a shame. So, the last questions come from our community. We asked and received three questions. And the first one you already know from Kim Wrestling. How does it feel to lose to 16-year-olds again and again in Mario Kart?
Well, children are supposed to be good at games, so it's only natural that a child would beat an adult at a game. So good for you. I'm glad that's what you hang your hat on. One day I will get better and I will get the W.
Okay, the next question from Willie, I guess. Yeah, Willie. Which match would you recommend from yourself to someone who never seen a match of yours?
It's hard because I'm so self-critical, and I'm so hard on myself, and I always pick everything of what I do, and I always like pick it apart, and it's very hard for me to watch a match back and be happy with it. And sometimes I just have to avoid watching my matches back altogether, or else I'll lose that feeling if it was a good one, or I'll be upset and I'll be like, oh, I gotta do better. Even if someone raves about it or rates it super high, I'll watch it back and I'll just tear it apart. And someone like Kelly or Urine will be like, "What is wrong with you? Like, dude, like just be happy. Like that was good." Uh, but just because so many people have come up to me about it and it got so much fanfare that night and the day after, and I actually have two in mind. The first one that I would suggest, the easy one because it did so much for me, I guess, and like even Star shows it around sometimes, is me versus David Starr in Munich.
Yes.
Although that's a very old version of myself, so I wouldn't say that's where they should start. That's really a big embodiment of me. Uh, but I think my go-to is probably me versus Ilya for the unified title in Hamburg.
Yes.
That match, if you go on like Cage Match and look up WXW and what they suggest to get acquainted with WXW, that match pops up. A lot of people, which was an honor to me, rated it as evenly as Walter versus Zach from that night, which was really cool because it's me and Ilya before he's a big NXT UK guy, but still growing obviously, or still a big name at the time. And then we're co-main event against Zack Sabre Jr. and Walter. And for people to be like, some people put Walter and Zach at match of the night. Some other people put us dead even. But regardless, everybody really seemed to enjoy it, and it was probably one of the more well critically received matches I've had. Me and Ilya work really well together, and actually, like it's a fun story of me and Ilya in Hamburg. My very first marquee event was against Ilya in Hamburg, where we had a good night. Some of the boys said it was one of the better matches of the night, if not the better match of the night. Like I think Urine of all people came up to me, who is Urine loves to bust my chops. Everybody knows that. Everybody's heard it. But he came up and he was just like, "Oh yeah, your guys' match was better than ours. You guys, I think, had the better match of the night." So I was like, "Oh bullshit! If Urine says that, okay." And then me and Ilya, the second time we face each other in Hamburg, it's for the unified title, and it's another just a baller of a match, and one that I'm very like. It's very rare for me to come back to a match and feel proud. And that match, I've never felt prouder. Uh, so that one, and to be honest, I really want me versus Ilya for a third time in Hamburg, because what also is the trouble with naming these matches is I feel like I'm always evolving and finding a better version of myself, and I feel like I'm a much better, more well-rounded performer in every aspect than the last time I wrestled Ilya. So it's almost hard to suggest that match because of that. Like I've added more rules to my repertoire. I've become a bit bigger. I've leaned out as well. I'm in better shape. I have a better look. I'm more well-rounded in all aspects of wrestling. So it's kind of hard to suggest stuff, but also it makes me just seeing how much Ilya's improved. I want me and Ilya for like a third time in Hamburg. Like I think that I'm not sure if other people want it, but for me that would be really special, and I think that would be something really cool to build around.
I wanted to, yeah.
So let's get to the last community question. I guess one of the most important questions of this year, sent in by the showstopper. Do you know a bigger thirst trap than Jörn Simmons?
Absolutely, 100% not. It's irrefutable. If there's a thirst trap meter, he's maxed out, broken, and then they had to replace it, and then he broke that one too. There isn't enough thirst in the world for all the people on the earth and Jurgen Simmons. Jurgen Simmons was born, and his mother looked at him dead in the eyes, and Jurgen said, "I'm thirsty." That boy, his thirst don't stop. It's irrefutable. It's disgusting. The thirst drips off him like sweat in a hot summer's day. There's no ifs, ands, or about it.
Okay, so Alexander, just tell our listeners where they can reach you on social media, on Twitch, and how they can support you.
So to be perfectly honest, for a man who wants to retire one day and just live in the woods and never be bothered again, I've got way too many ways to get a hold of me. To be perfectly honest, like I'm not the most social people. Like when I'm not at a wrestling show, I just keep to myself. Yet I have a million ways you can get a hold of me. So first and foremost, on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Pain Prince James. Of course, email for booking and seminar inquiries and stuff like that is alexanderjamespop@gmail.com. My Facebook is private. You'd still probably be able to find me though, but I'm not going to give it to you, so you're going to have to look for it. Of course, especially now with everything's going on, the Twitch is twitch.tv/thecrowntwitch. We are also on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is thecrown.gaming. Twitter is thecrown_gaming. Instagram is thecrown.gaming. Of course, now we're on YouTube. If you go to twitch.tv/thecrowntwitch and go ahead and hit on the YouTube button, it'll take you right there. That actually went live as of the time of this interview started, 12 o'clock my time on May the 8th. So now videos are going to be going up to that. That's going to have original content and previous streams. If you'd like to support, just follow, tell a friend, share stuff. If you decide to make donations to the stream, you don't have to. It's a hard time for everybody. I don't expect you to. Don't even necessarily want you to, but if you do, remember half of it's going to charity. Feel free to hit subscribe if you don't have the means to subscribe to the Twitch channel. You can subscribe for free if you have an Amazon Prime account. You get one free Twitch subscription a month. It doesn't cost you anything extra. And of course, YouTube, it's always free to subscribe because, it's YouTube. So yeah, that's all that. Ching-a-ling.
What about merch? Is there some way to...
Oh shit, that was probably the most important thing. God, I'm a bad pro wrestler. ProWrestlingTees.com/Alexander James. If you're from Europe and you'd like the new Pain Prince of Hunt Valley t-shirt, which is only available in Europe right now because of shipping because of the corona, that is painprincejames.bigcartel.com. And of course, if you'd like to support the Twitch channel, there's also merchandise for the Twitch channel as well. That's teespring.com/store/thecrowngaming. So 3 places to buy merchandise, which I somehow forgot.
No problem. So we can remind you to not forget where we can support you.
Thank you for reminding me how I'm supposed to be making a living because I had forgotten. Makes me dumb.
We hope that you can make your living during these hard times where you cannot get into action as a wrestler and earn your money in this place. Thanks for being here and having this talk with us.
No, thank you. And again, I appreciate guys. I appreciate everybody's supports. I've been fortunate enough that when all this started, there was an outpouring of support, especially when I was kind of stranded in Germany for a bit. And I really appreciate everybody that supported, everybody who's donated to the channel, everybody who's pushed my merchandise or bought some or whatever it is. Like, there's been an outpouring of support over the past couple weeks, and I never really realized how many, I'm not going to say fans, I'm going to say supporters that I had for me and my career, no matter what I did, until all this kind of started. And it's a very heartwarming experience, and I really appreciate it. And I just hope I can give back to you guys like you've given to me. And to be honest, I'm motivated to wrestle more now than ever. I'm in the best shape of my life, just the way I've been training at home. I got a bit of a new look. I'm motivated. I got ideas. I'm ready to go. I got some new things to add in, some things to take out, and I'm just coming in with a lot more piss and vinegar than I ever have. So I'm ready to go when this is all over.
So we're all looking forward to see you at the moment live at Twitch and in the hopefully near future live at WXW or any other wrestling promotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wish you and Sebastian, you too, a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
You
having
too.
me, guys.